American democracy is under threat. That was the starting point for a task force assembled by the American Bar Association 2 years ago and led by former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson and former federal judge J. Michael Luttig. Their mission was to investigate the causes and potential solutions for this growing problem. Since their work began, the country has seen a turbulent election, the transfer of power, deepening political polarization, and an alarming rise in political violence, witnessed again this week with the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
My guest today is Jeh Johnson, who served as Secretary of Homeland Security under President Obama. He's been at the center of America's biggest national security challenges, from counterterrorism to protecting our democracy from internal threats. And that's what I want to talk about with him today, because the American Bar Association's Task Force for American Democracy, which Secretary Johnson co-chaired, just released a report with a number of recommendations on what needs to be done to defend American democracy against the unprecedented threats we now face. Secretary Johnson, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I look forward to our discussion, and thank you for your interest in our report.
Well, I want to start with why you felt there was a need for this report, especially a report directed at lawyers, the American Bar Association. What was the urgency of this moment?
I could not think of a more important issue to tackle 2 years ago when the president of the ABA asked Judge Michael Luttig and me to take this on. I was honored to co-chair this effort with him. He's one of my modern day heroes, a real profile in courage. And we assembled a really extraordinary group of distinguished Americans as part of this task force. As you can see from the cover page of the report, Democrats, Republicans, it's not exclusively lawyers, business people, retired CEOs like Ken Frazier, Ken Chenault, former judges like the former Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, Maureen O'Connor, law professors, historians. And we wanted to not just tackle sort of the crisis of the moment, because there are a lot of moments, and there's a crisis a day almost in our political world these days. We wanted to really address the factors that underlie what's going on in our democracy. So, for example, the Pew Research poll on trust in government, 1958, something like 75% of Americans trusted our government to do the right thing, something like almost all the time. That number today in 2024, last year, is down to 2%. And so there's a lot stirring among the American electorate, a lot of suspicion, disenchantment, and we wanted to take that on, explore the reality that a lot of politicians today pander to those suspicions and cynicism, and put forth a series of recommendations that are as relevant today as they will be a year from now or 5 years from now.
I give this audience an enormous amount of credit for appreciating the importance of our legal foundations, our legal infrastructure, and the lawyers that support it. Our founder, Ben Meiselas, is a lawyer. One of our biggest shows is Legal AF, which I know members of your task force know well. I'm a I'm a fake lawyer. I got the degree, but never practiced. But I want to read for the audience this observation in the report, and then have you speak to the central role that lawyers in particular will have to play in supporting and defending our democracy. Lawyers are uniquely qualified to support and defend the Constitution and the rule of law. They must neither be complicit with nor intimidated by the government's blatant scare tactics. Can you talk about that unique role? And I say this as a former military person. Lawyers have a special role, even in that context, for supporting and defending the Constitution.
Lawyers are trained in the law, of course. They're trained in the Constitution. They appear before judges. They take an oath of admission. And in my 43 and a half year experience as a lawyer, I have observed that lawyers take a special interest in our democracy. And so we say that lawyers have been part of the problem and they should be part of the solution. And we put forth a section in our report on what lawyers can do to become more involved, how regulators, how bar associations can promote protecting the rule of law, protecting our democracy, respect for our courts, the integrity of our courts. And I, in particular, spent a lot of time on that section of the report. Lawyers are uniquely qualified to step up, defend the rule of law, and promote our democracy.
Hey everyone, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say just how grateful I am for all of your support for this channel and for this show. We have a big reporting trip coming up to Ukraine. I could use your help. We have to cover the film crew, interpreters, fixers, security. It's a whole thing, but it is worth it to be able to share with you and others what is actually happening on the ground there. I just published a feature story in The Atlantic about my last trip where I embedded with the drone unit at the front. Click the link below for the full article, and we'll be putting out more great fact-based reporting over Substack. Please consider subscribing. Everything I make from Substack and Patreon goes back into this show. Thanks for the help. Most of the recommendations in the report seem to me to be the kind of foundational recommendations for long-term health of our democracy. Things like reinvigorating civics education or
Yes.
reducing partisan influence in election administration. All good and well. I'm wondering how you considered those long-term considerations against the urgency of the moment. And towards the end of the report, there are some recommendations that I think speak to the urgency, the immediacy of what we need to do right now. Look, it's going to be great to have an upcoming generation that's been educated with the recommendations of this report and the need to be faithful to democracy. But in my eyes and in the eyes, I'm sure, of much of this audience, we don't have that much time.
Yeah. Well, when we started writing this report, that was pre-2024 election. And we were due to submit this report and complete it in August of 2024, a year ago. And in July of 2024, we hit the pause button because we were in the middle of such a volatile election season with the attempted assassination of President Trump, with Biden dropping out, with Kamala Harris stepping in. We couldn't write a report in the midst of such a political storm. So we decided to put it off a year until after the election. And you're right, you can't, in a report like this that I want to be durable, relevant today, tomorrow, next year, you can't respond to the crisis of the moment because there are going to be 10 more by the time you finish the document. And so we very intentionally and deliberately put forth things like reinvesting in civics education, like open nonpartisan primaries, fusion voting, ranked choice voting, that are initiatives and efforts underway now that will continue to be out there for years to come. And we wanted to try to give some oomph and a push to that.
I'm going to read one of the starkest and simplest recommendations of the report because I think it speaks to the urgency of this moment. You recommend that state Supreme Courts add to their oaths of admission this simple phrase: I do solemnly swear to support democracy and the rule of law. I think we need to comment on the fact that that now needs to be said.
Well, that's a good point. First of all, professional responsibility, professional discipline in the legal profession is a state level matter. State Supreme Courts, state bar associations, and the like. It's not a national federal matter. And the oaths do vary. I believe that there are one or two oaths that already do make mention of the rule of law. Those are not, rule of law, democracy are not necessarily concrete terms. It's a principle. And so by taking an oath to support our democracy, to support rule of law, there's a fair amount in the interpretation of those things, but it should ring true to just about anybody who's a member of the bar. And so we want state Supreme Courts, state regulators to take a serious look at this and to incorporate it, because even though there are some variances, I suspect, in exactly how people understand those terms, um, there's a certain truth to them. And supporting and defending our democracy should ring true to almost every lawyer. Supporting and defending our rule of law, just like it's almost like saying support and defend the Constitution. It's an oath you and I took several times, and there shouldn't be a whole lot of doubt about exactly what that means. And I know you took your oath seriously when you raised your hand. I took my oath seriously, and I believe members of the bar should do the same, whether you're in government or not.
You may have had this experience in the run-up or the immediate aftermath of the election. I had it probably 4 or 5 times in tabletop exercises or wargaming scenarios in which the response of the pro-democracy side was to litigate, to file lawsuits, to file amicus briefs. And we got steamrolled every time. How much faith should we be placing in our legal system as a bulwark?
Excellent question. Lawyers alone cannot solve what ails our democracy right now. Lawyers can lead the way. You noted litigation that is brought. Right now, we're in a heavily litigious environment with the numerous challenges to initiatives taken on by the current administration. But lawyers' litigation themselves cannot solve this problem. As part of this effort, this ABA effort, Judge Ludwig and I went out on a listening tour across the country. We were heartened that in almost every place we went, the auditorium or the classroom was full. And not just with lawyers. Lawyers tend to be the most engaged, the most interested, but also included everyday election workers at the precinct, county level, people who are just interested in our democracy, love our country. I think lawyers cannot be the only ones to solve the problem. And people my generation, I'll be 68 in a few days, people my generation cannot be the ones to solve this problem. One of my regrets in our listening tours is we didn't see more young people in their 20s and 30s who care about our democracy and want to know how they can get involved. And so often lawyers have to lead the way. You've met all kinds of lawyers in government, I'm sure, including lawyers who are not acting as lawyers. In the administration in which I served, the president was a lawyer, the vice president was a lawyer, the secretary of state was a lawyer, and the deadliest line I would hear in the Situation Room from one such person was, "I know I'm not supposed to practice law, but." And so lawyers do play a large role, but this is not a report about lawyers. This is not a report just for lawyers. It's a report for concerned, patriotic Americans. For example, citizen redistricting commissions. That's something that has been an initiative in certain states to allow citizens to draw legislative districts, not politicians. That's not all about lawyers. That's about people who vote and who care. And so we want this report to resonate not just with lawyers, but far beyond that community.
Well, thank you so much for your leadership of the committee, for the report itself. We'll make sure to put a link down in the show notes. Secretary Johnson, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you for your interest. Thanks for having me.